A little girl interrupted the Mafia king's private dinner, then showed him the birthmark that shattered his empire. In New Orleans, behind a locked brass door beneath an old French Quarter restaurant, Adrian Cole sat surrounded by men who feared him more than death. Outside, rain hammered the alleyways. Inside, power moved in whispers, and one rule held the room together: no stranger entered without permission. Then the door opened. A 7-year-old girl stepped in, soaked, trembling, and holding a plastic folder to her chest like it was the last piece of the world she had left. She did not ask for money. She did not beg for mercy. She only raised her wrist and showed him a mark he had spent his whole life hiding. Stay with this story because it is not just about crime. It is about grief, blood-lost love, and whether a dangerous man can still become worthy of being called father. Like this video and comment where you're watching from. The name Heart moved through Adrian Cole like a song played in a locked room. For a moment he did not speak. He only looked at the child standing 12 feet away from him, her raincoat dripping onto the polished floor, her thin fingers gripping the plastic folder as if someone might try to take the dead from her too. Outside the private room, the city kept breathing. Silverware touched plates upstairs. A trumpet moaned softly from the restaurant bar. Rain tapped against the old brick walls with steady little fingers. Inside, everything had stopped. Adrian stayed seated. He knew how he looked when he stood. Men twice this child's size had forgotten their words under his shadow. So he kept his hands on the table where she could see them, palms still cuff open the broken crescent birthmark exposed beneath the amber light. The girl stared at his wrist, then at her own. Her lips parted. She said it would match, she whispered. Adrian's throat tightened around a name he had not allowed in his house, his clubs, his cars, or his conversations for 7 years. Who said that? The child looked down. My mama. He already knew. Still, he made himself ask. What was your mother's name, Clara Hart? There it was. Spoken in a child's voice. Soft, tired, absolute. Adrian had heard men beg before. He had heard lies told beautifully. He had heard last words, threats, prayers, and bargains offered by men who believed fear could purchase one more breath. None of it had ever touched the place where Clara's name landed. He lowered his sleeve slowly. Where is she, Maisie? The girl blinked once. The kind of blink children use when they are trying not to become smaller in front of adults. She died. The room did not tilt. It should have. The table should have cracked down the middle. The glasses should have shattered. The lights should have gone out above him. But everything remained expensive, polished, and calm, which made the truth feel crueler. Adrian looked at her muddy shoes. One lace had come undone, leaving a dark, wet line across the floor. When 11 days ago. 11 days. For 11 days, Clara Hart had been gone from the world, and New Orleans had kept glowing. Bourbon Street had kept singing. The river had kept carrying barges through the dark. Men had kept paying debts. Women had kept lighting candles in churches. Adrian had sat in meetings, signed papers, moved money, threatened fools, and slept poorly beneath a roof that had never known her death. He had felt nothing because he had known nothing. What happened? Maisie pressed the folder tighter to her chest. She was sick. What kind of sick? Her small face changed. Not confusion, not fear, memory. The kind people lower their voices for. Adrian closed his eyes for half a second. Cancer, then. Or something like it. Something slow enough to leave a child watching adults whisper in hallways. Something cruel enough to make a woman like Clara plan the end with clean hands and hidden panic. When he opened his eyes, Maisie was reaching into the plastic folder. Her fingers were red from cold. She pulled out a photograph sealed inside a clear sandwich bag, the edges bent from being carried too long. She stepped forward, then stopped measuring the distance between them like it might bite. Adrian did not move. Maisie took 2 more steps and placed the photograph near the end of the table. Then she retreated just as quickly. He picked it up. The photograph showed a younger version of him standing outside a hospital entrance near Tremé. He wore a dark coat, no tie, and the expression of a man who had been told to smile and had refused on principle. Behind the camera, Clara must have been laughing. He remembered the exact sound of it, low at first, then bright when she failed to hide it. She had said he looked like he was being forced to attend his own funeral. He had almost smiled. Almost. His thumb turned the photo over. Clara's handwriting waited on the back. If anything happens to me, Maisie, find Adrian Cole. Show him your wrist. There is still a man beneath all that stone. Adrian read the words once, then again. Clara wrote the way she lived with pressure. Every letter looked certain. Even when she was dying, even when fear must have been waiting beside her bed, she had pressed the pen hard enough to leave grooves. Maisie watched his face. She said you would understand. Adrian set the photograph down with care. Did she tell you who I was? Maisie hesitated. She said you were important. That is not an answer. The girl looked toward the door, though there was no one visible now. She said some people were scared of you. His mouth tightened. And were you? Maisie thought about it. Children, Adrian knew, often answered too honestly when adults were foolish enough to ask real questions. I was more scared of not finding you. Something inside him shifted. Not broke, not yet. It moved like an old door forced open after years of rust. He reached toward the service button near the wall. Maisie flinched. His hand stopped. I am ordering food, he said. I'm not hungry. Her stomach betrayed her with a small sound that filled the quiet room. Adrian pressed the button. A voice answered at once. Yes, Mr. Cole tomato soup. Bread. Milk. Something warm. Bring it to the door. Knock once. No one enters. Yes, sir. Adrian released the button. Maisie lowered her eyes, embarrassed by her own hunger. He knew that look. He had seen it in boys recruited too young from broken neighborhoods, men fresh out of prison, women standing outside clinics with children asleep against their hips. Hunger had manners when life had punished people for needing too much. He had never expected to see it on his own child. His own child. The words did not belong to him yet. They would not fit. They moved through his mind like foreign currency, valuable and unusable. He looked at her again, the shape of her chin, the stubborn way she held it up even as her knees trembled. Clara's chin, Clara's refusal to collapse in front of people who might mistake sorrow for weakness. How old are you, 7? 7. 7 years of mornings. 7 years of birthdays. 7 years of fever shoes, outgrown teeth, lost drawings made, questions asked. 7 years of Clara raising a child alone, while Adrian built an empire out of silence and fear. 7 years of his daughter learning his name as a secret. He looked back at the photograph. Clara had left him in autumn. He remembered the day he realized she was gone. Her apartment had been empty with the kind of care that told him she had planned it. No clothes in the closet, no mug by the sink, no books stacked beside the bed. The broken ceiling fan still clicked overhead, turning slowly in the heat, stirring air that no longer carried her perfume. Her phone had been disconnected. Her landlord had been paid in cash for the final month. A neighbor remembered a woman loading 2 suitcases into a blue sedan before sunrise. No one remembered the plate. No one admitted anything useful. For 6 months, Adrian had searched quietly, then thoroughly. Bus stations, hospitals, old co-workers, rental offices, clinics, friends from nursing school, every heart he could find in 3 states. Men brought him scraps of information that led nowhere. A job application in Alabama that was not hers. A woman in Tampa with the same first name. A bank account closed before he could follow it. Gideon had finally said the thing no one else dared. She left well because she knew you would find her if she only ran halfway. Adrian had almost struck him for it. He had not, because Gideon had been right. Clara had understood him too well. She knew the reach of his money, his patience, his pride. She knew he would call it love while using every weapon he owned to drag her back into a life she had chosen to survive without. So Adrian stopped looking. Not because he stopped loving her, because some part of him had known that if Clara had made herself impossible to find, she had done it for a reason. The knock came at the door. Maisie stiffened. Adrian rose before the server could enter. He crossed the room, opened the door only wide enough to take the tray, and looked at the young waiter until the man wisely lowered his gaze. "No one comes down this hall," Adrian said. "Yes, Mr. Cole." He closed the door and carried the tray back himself. Tomato soup steamed in a white bowl. The bread was warm. The milk was poured into a small glass that looked absurd beside the crystal and wine. He placed the food in front of Maisie. "Eat." She looked at him, searching for a trap inside the command. Then hunger won. She climbed onto the chair, but only sat on the edge as if ready to run. She broke the bread into careful pieces and dipped each one into the soup. She ate fast, then slowed herself, then forgot, and ate fast again. Her eyes stayed down, her shoulders stayed tight. Adrian sat across from her, saying nothing. While she ate, his mind pulled him backward. Clara Hart had been 27 when he met her, wearing blue scrubs and a look of complete irritation. One of Adrian's men, bleeding from a knife wound and using a fake name so badly even a child could have caught it, had stumbled into the charity clinic near Tremé just before midnight. Adrian arrived 20 minutes later to manage the problem. The clinic smelled of antiseptic old coffee and rain-soaked clothes. A television mounted in the corner played local news with the sound muted. Clara stood beside the examination table with blood on one sleeve and fury in her eyes. "You must be the reason everyone suddenly forgot how to breathe," she said. Adrian had looked at the wounded man, then back at her. "You know who I am? I know the type." He had not been used to that. Women feared him, wanted him, avoided him, or performed bravery for him. Clara did none of those things. She looked at him like a problem that had walked in wearing Italian shoes. "What type is that?" he asked. "Men who think silence makes them holy." The wounded man made the mistake of laughing. Clara turned on him. "You move again and I stitch your mouth shut before I finish your side." The man stopped laughing. Adrian should have left. Instead, he stayed. That had always been Clara's gift. She made him remain in rooms where he could not control the truth. For 14 months she became the only honest thing in his life. Not innocent. Clara had never been innocent in the foolish sense. She knew there was blood around him. She knew the money came from dark places. She knew men lowered their eyes when he entered because they had been taught the price of looking too long. Still, she saw something in him that Adrian had almost forgotten to pretend existed. They met in places that did not belong to him. A closed diner with cracked red seats. A laundromat at 2 a.m. because Clara said his shirt smelled like smoke and arrogance. Her apartment where the ceiling fan clicked and the kitchen sink leaked unless you turned the handle just right. His car parked near the Mississippi windows, fogged by summer rain, the river moving black and endless beside them. She talked too much when she was tired. About patients who could not afford medicine. About children who came to the clinic hungry. About rent bruises, fever, and the way poor people learn to apologize for needing help. Adrian talked less. Clara noticed anyway. One night he came to her with split knuckles and a cut along his cheekbone. She opened the door, stared at him, then walked into the kitchen without asking what happened. "Sit down," she said. He did. She cleaned the cut with alcohol. He did not flinch. "Tell me it was necessary," she said. "It was. That was too fast. You want me to lie slower? I want you to hate it." He had no answer. She pressed the gauze harder against his face. "That is what scares me about you, Adrian. Not that you can hurt people. Lots of men can hurt people. It is that you can convince yourself it was the only way." He remembered the anger that rose in him. He remembered wanting to leave. He remembered staying because her hand was on his face and she touched him like she did not expect him to bite. The beginning of the end came outside the clinic. Clara finished a double shift at dawn. The sky was pale purple over the rooftops. She was walking to her car when a dark sedan rolled slowly along the curb. A man stepped out. Adrian did not know this until later when Clara finally told him with her hands wrapped around a coffee mug and no color in her face. The man had smiled at her. "Tell Cole his heart has a door," he said. "We found it, that was all. No gun, no grab, no violence, just proof." Adrian sent men to watch her building, changed her routes, put a driver outside the clinic, told her he could protect her. Clara listened from the doorway of her apartment, arms folded, eyes tired. "You do not understand," she said. "I understand perfectly." "No. You understand enemies. You understand guards. You understand what corner to watch when you walk into a room. You do not understand what it feels like to become a target because somebody loves you. I can keep you safe." She looked at him then with something worse than anger. "Can you keep me free?" He had not answered. 2 weeks later, she discovered she was pregnant. Adrian did not know that part until now, sitting across from their daughter, while rain washed New Orleans clean outside a room built for secrets. He imagined Clara alone in that small bathroom, one hand over her mouth, the pregnancy test in her trembling fingers. He imagined her sitting on the edge of the tub while sirens moved somewhere beyond the window. He imagined her thinking of him, of the sedan outside the clinic, of a child who would be born with his blood and therefore his enemies. Clara did not run because she stopped loving him. She ran because love had become dangerous. Maisie finished the soup. She wiped her mouth with the napkin and folded it without being asked. "Did Mama ever tell you why she left?" Adrian asked. The child looked at the empty bowl. "She said sometimes grown-ups love somebody and still have to go." "That is what she said." Maisie nodded. "She said staying can hurt too." Adrian leaned back. The sentence had Clara's fingerprints all over it. "Did she have family?" "No. No one. Mrs. Carter. But she is not family. She says family is who shows up when it costs something." Adrian almost smiled at that, though it hurt. "Where have you been staying with Mrs. Carter?" "She lives downstairs from us. Her hands hurt, and she has a cat that hates everybody. What is the cat's name? Senator. Why? Because he yells and does not help." This time, the corner of Adrian's mouth moved before he could stop it. Maisie noticed. Her face changed for half a second. Not joy exactly, but recognition. Like she had found proof that the man in front of her was not all stone. Then she lowered her eyes again. "The lady with the blue coat came yesterday," she said. "What lady? I don't know. From an office. She talked to Mrs. Carter in the hallway. She said there were forms. She said I might have to go somewhere else." Adrian's face went cold. "Somewhere else. For kids." The words were small, but they filled the room. "Do you want to go there?" Maisie's fingers tightened around the napkin. "No." He did not think before he spoke. "You are not going." She looked up quickly. "But what if the lady says I have to? Then the lady is wrong." "Can grown-ups be wrong on paper?" "Yes. Can you fix paper?" Adrian thought of judges, files, signatures, favors, threats, money, and all the clean ways. Dirty men made doors open. "Yes," he said. "I can fix paper." Maisie seemed to believe him only halfway, which was more trust than he had earned. He took out his phone and called Gideon first, though the man was just outside the door. That was how Adrian spoke when walls had ears and drivers did not need to learn more than they were paid to know. Gideon answered on the second ring. Yes. I need everything on Clara Hart. Last address, medical records, death certificate, any attorney, any social worker, anything involving the child. A pause. The child. By morning. Before morning, Gideon said. Adrian ended the call. The second call went to Rebecca Sloan. She answered with a voice sharpened by sleep and irritation. Adrian, unless someone is dead or about to be called my office. Someone is dead. I need emergency guardianship papers for a minor. Silence. Then Rebecca was fully awake. What minor, Maisie Hart? 7 years old. Mother deceased. No known living relatives. Are you related to the child? Adrian looked at Maisie. She had turned toward the rain-streaked window and was tracing one drop as it slid down the glass. Yes. The silence on Rebecca's end lengthened. How? She is my daughter. Rebecca inhaled once. Adrian. Do not say my name like that. I am saying it like a lawyer who knows courts dislike surprises, especially when the surprise is attached to you. Prepare the petition. I need documentation. You will have it. I need more than your certainty. You will have that too. Rebecca's voice softened only slightly. Is the child safe? Adrian looked at Maisie again. Safe was a word with too many rooms inside it. She is with me. That was not my question. He did not answer. Rebecca sighed. Send me the mother's full name, date of birth, if you have it. The child's birth certificate, if it exists, and anything proving your relationship. I will start tonight. Good. Adrian. What if this becomes public? Every enemy you have will read the petition like a map. His eyes moved to the door. Then make sure it does not become public. He ended the call before she could answer. Maisie turned from the window. Was that the paper lady? My lawyer? Is she nice? No. Maisie nodded, accepting this as reasonable. Cannot nice people still help? Yes. The third call was to Mrs. Evelyn Carter. Maisie recited the number from memory, careful with each digit. Adrian dialed. The woman who answered sounded old, tired, and afraid to hope. Hello, Mrs. Carter. My name is Adrian Cole. Maisie Hart is with me. There was a sharp breath. Is she safe? Yes. Thank God. The sincerity of it nearly undid him. She said you have her belongings. I do. A backpack. Some clothes. Clara's box. Not much. Her voice trembled. I did not know what to do. The woman from Child Services said she would come back in the morning. She does not need to come back. A pause. You are family. Adrian looked at Maisie, who watched him with those careful eyes. Yes. Mrs. Carter was quiet long enough that Adrian heard the faint sound of a television behind her. Clara said someone might come, she said. Near the end, when the pain was bad, she kept saying there was someone. Then she would get scared and stop talking. I thought maybe it was the medicine. It was not. No, Mrs. Carter said, and now there was iron beneath the age in her voice. I suppose it was not. Adrian accepted the judgment in her silence. She loved that child more than breath, Mrs. Carter said. I know, no, Mr. Cole. You do not. But maybe you can learn. He deserved that. He knew it before the words reached him. I will send someone for Maisie's things. I will not hand them to just anyone. Good. That answer seemed to satisfy her. Send a man who knows how to be gentle with a box, she said. There are things inside that little girl is not ready to touch. I will. And Mr. Cole? Yes. If you hurt her, I am old, not helpless. Adrian looked down at the photograph of Clara. I believe you. He ended the call and set the phone on the table. Maisie had been watching him closely. Is Mrs. Carter mad? No. She sounds mad when she cares. Adrian glanced at her. So did your mother. Maisie's face softened, then folded inward for a heartbeat before she forced it still again. He hated that. The forcing. The tiny discipline of it. The way grief had already taught her to behave. Maisie. She looked up. You can cry in this room. Her eyes widened slightly as if he had told her she could break a law. I'm not crying. I can see that. I do not cry in front of people. Why? She looked at the napkin in her lap. It makes them look scared. Adrian had no answer ready for that. Men like him always had answers. Polished ones. Armed ones. Answers that ended conversations and moved people where he wanted them. This child had walked into his locked room and left him defenseless with ordinary truth. He stood. Maisie pulled back at once. Adrian stopped. We are leaving, he said. Where? My house. She did not move. Is it far? No. Do you have kids there? No. A wife? No. A dog? No. She considered this with visible concern. Do you have cereal? I can get cereal. That is not the same. No, he said. It is not. For the first time, her mouth almost curved. He reached for her raincoat, then stopped, unsure whether touching her would frighten her. Maisie solved the problem by offering one sleeve. He helped her into the coat carefully, as if the fabric were something breakable. The hallway outside the private room had been emptied. Of course it had. Gideon stood near the service entrance with 2 guards and the expression of a man who had rearranged an entire building in under 5 minutes. His gaze dropped to Maisie, then returned to Adrian. Adrian gave him no explanation. Car. Gideon nodded. They moved through the back corridor. In the kitchen, cooks turned away without being told. Steam rose from silver pots. Someone dropped a spoon, then froze until Adrian had passed. Maisie noticed all of it. At the service door, rain fell hard into the alley, turning the pavement black and shining. Adrian opened his coat and shielded her as they crossed to the waiting SUV. Maisie climbed inside and buckled herself with practiced concentration. Adrian sat beside her in the back. Gideon took the front passenger seat. The driver pulled away from the curb. For several blocks, no one spoke. New Orleans moved past the windows in blurred gold and black. Neon signs bled into puddles. A woman hurried beneath a red umbrella. A trumpet player stood under an awning playing to nobody because music in that city did not always need an audience. Maisie pressed her forehead lightly against the glass. Adrian watched her reflection. She looked too small for the amount of silence inside her. After a while, she asked, Did my mama know your house? Adrian looked out at the rain. No. Did she know you were lonely? The question was so quiet he almost pretended not to hear it. He turned toward her. Why do you ask that? Maisie kept her eyes on the window. She said people can have everybody afraid of them and still have nobody waiting for them. Gideon went very still in the front seat. Adrian looked at the child's reflection again. Clara had known him. Even after disappearing, even after changing cities and raising his daughter alone, she had known him with unbearable accuracy. No, Adrian said. She never saw my house. Maisie nodded. But she knew. The SUV turned toward the garden district where the streets grew quieter and the oaks leaned over the road like old witnesses. Mansions stood behind iron fences, pale and grand beneath the rain, their windows glowing with the kind of warmth money could imitate but not create. Adrian's house waited at the end of Britannia Street, white columns rising through the mist, black gates opening before the vehicle stopped. Maisie looked up as they pulled into the drive. Her small hand tightened around the plastic folder. Adrian noticed but did not tell her not to be afraid. The gates closed behind them. The house stood bright and silent against the rain built to keep the world out, waiting for the first child who would teach it how to let someone in. The gates closed behind the SUV with a soft iron groan, and Maisie Hart watched them through the rain-streaked window as if the sound had locked her inside a dream she did not trust. Adrian Cole's house rose beyond the driveway, pale and still under the storm. White columns climbed toward a second-floor balcony. Black shutters framed tall windows. Live oaks bent over the roof, their branches heavy with Spanish moss and rainwater. The place looked less like a home than a courthouse where secrets went to be sentenced. The driver stopped beneath the front awning. Gideon stepped out first, scanning the dark street beyond the gate. He always moved like that, slow enough to seem calm, sharp enough to miss nothing. Adrian opened Maisie's door. She did not take his hand. She looked at it, then at the house, then slid down from the seat by herself. Her shoes landed in a shallow puddle. Water soaked through the loose laces, but she did not complain. Adrian noticed. That was beginning to trouble him how much she did not complain. She stood beside him, the plastic folder pressed to her chest beneath her raincoat. Her face tilted up toward the mansion. "You live here?" she asked. "Yes." "Alone?" "Yes." She studied the porch lights glowing against the wet columns. "It looks like it doesn't know how to be happy." Gideon turned his face away, but Adrian saw his mouth tighten. Adrian looked at the house he had bought because it had high walls, old bones, hidden rooms, and good sight lines from every front window. He had reinforced the doors, rewired, the cameras, replaced the cellar locks, and paid more than most families would see in a lifetime to make the place untouchable. No one had ever called it unhappy. No one had ever been right so quickly. He placed one hand lightly against Maisie's back, not pushing, only guiding. She flinched anyway, so small most people might have missed it. Adrian removed his hand. "Come inside," he said. The front door opened before they reached it. Owen Price, Adrian's oldest driver and one of the few men allowed near his private rooms, stood in the entry. He was broad-shouldered, gray-haired, and careful in the way men became careful after surviving wars they did not discuss. His eyes dropped to Maisie. For 1 second, something soft passed over his face. Then he looked at Adrian. "Sir, no one comes in tonight unless I say, 'Yes, sir.' And Owen." The older man waited. "Find cereal." Owen blinked once. "What kind?" Adrian looked down at Maisie. She answered carefully, as if wrong answers might cost too much. "Cinnamon if they have it. But plain is okay." Owen nodded with the solemn duty of a man receiving military orders. "Cinnamon." Maisie watched him go. He talks quiet. He knows when not to waste words. My mama said quiet people are either kind or hiding something. Adrian glanced at her. Sometimes both. The entryway smelled of leatherwood polish and rain. Maisie stepped inside and stopped on the marble floor. Her wet shoes squeaked. She looked down at the sound with alarm. "It's fine," Adrian said. "I'm wet." "I can see that. I don't want to ruin it. It is a floor." She stared at him, unsure whether that was permission or a trick. Adrian removed his coat and placed it over the back of a chair. The gesture felt wrong. He had never thought about what a child might need after coming in from the rain. A towel, dry clothes, warmth, food, a voice that did not sound like an order. Gideon entered behind them and closed the door. The locks clicked into place, one after another. Maisie heard every click. Her fingers tightened around the folder. Adrian saw it. "Gideon," he said. The older man paused. "Leave the hall lights on." Gideon looked at him for half a second, then nodded. "Of course." Adrian led Maisie toward the staircase. She moved carefully, eyes taking in everything. The high ceiling, the chandelier, the dark oil paintings of ships and storms, the polished banister, the absence of family photographs, the absence of shoes by the door, folded blankets, children's books, stray coffee cups, anything touched by accident. The house was clean because no one lived in it, loudly enough to leave proof. Halfway up the stairs, Maisie asked, "Do you have pictures? Paintings?" "No." "Pictures." Adrian knew what she meant. "No." "Why not? I never needed them." She looked at the wall beside the stairs, empty except for shadow. "My mama said pictures are proof something happened." Adrian kept walking, but the words followed him. On the second floor, he opened the door to a guest room at the end of the hall. White sheets, white walls, a dark dresser, one lamp, one chair, one window facing the garden. It was a room prepared for people who never stayed long. Maisie stood at the threshold. Adrian looked at the room through her eyes and saw too late how cold it was. "This is yours for now," he said. Maisie's face changed. "For now" means temporary. The correction was quiet, but it landed with the force of accusation. Adrian turned toward her. "This is yours." She looked up. For how long men had asked Adrian fewer questions before being removed from rooms. This child asked because every room in her life had started to feel borrowed. "As long as you need it," he said. Maisie's hand slid over the strap of her folder. "My mama said needing things makes people leave." Adrian lowered himself slowly until his eyes were level with hers. The movement felt strange in his knees, strange in his pride. He could not remember the last time he had made himself smaller for anyone. "Not me." She studied him with a tired seriousness that did not belong on a 7-year-old face. "You don't know that yet." Adrian did not answer too fast. Adrian. He was learning already that quick promises sounded cheap to children who had watched adults whisper outside sick rooms. "No," he said. "I don't. But I'm saying it anyway." Her shoulders lowered just barely. He pointed toward another door. "Bathroom is there." She looked at her raincoat. "I have pajamas at Mrs. Carter's. Tonight you can use something here." He went to the dresser and opened drawers that had been stocked by a housekeeper for guests who rarely came. White towels, soap still wrapped in paper, a folded cotton shirt, too large for her but clean. He placed the shirt on the bed. Maisie looked at it. "Is it yours?" "No." "Good." The answer almost pulled a smile from him. He turned away while she carried the shirt into the bathroom. Through the closed door he heard the soft rustle of wet fabric. He stood in the center of the room, helpless and too aware of every polished surface. Gideon appeared in the hallway. Adrian stepped out and pulled the bedroom door partly closed behind him. "What do we know?" he asked. "Rebecca is moving. She wants the child's birth certificate and Clara's death certificate by morning. I have men checking hospitals in Louisiana and Vermont. Owen is on his way for cereal and clothes. Not men from the cruise." Gideon's eyes sharpened. "I know. No one from the docks, no collectors, no drivers who talk." "I said I know." Adrian looked toward the bathroom door. Gideon lowered his voice. "She cannot exist in your world and remain untouched by it." Adrian's gaze hardened. "She stays here. I did not say she shouldn't." "Then what are you saying?" "I'm saying a fortress is not the same as a home." Adrian looked back at him. The bathroom door opened before he could answer. Maisie stepped out wearing the oversized white shirt. It fell past her knees. Her wet hair had been combed back with her fingers. Without the raincoat, she looked smaller, all elbows and eyes and exhaustion. Gideon's face softened in spite of himself. Maisie looked at him. "Are you the man who worries?" Gideon blinked. Adrian turned slightly toward the window so she would not see the corner of his mouth move. "I suppose I am," Gideon said. "My mama said worriers are useful." Gideon looked at Adrian, then back at Maisie. "Your mother sounds like a wise woman." She was. There was no hesitation in the answer, no childish uncertainty. Clara's place in Maisie's heart was not a memory yet. It was still the air she was missing. Adrian felt the room tighten around that truth. Gideon stepped back. "I'll be downstairs." When he left, Maisie climbed onto the edge of the bed, but did not lie down. She sat with her hands folded in her lap. "Do I sleep now?" she asked. "If you want." "What do you do at night work?" "Always, usually." She looked around the room. "My mama used to read until I fell asleep when she wasn't too sick." Adrian looked at the empty nightstand. No books. No lamp shaped like an animal. No stuffed toy. No soft corner of the world prepared for a child. "I don't have children's books." "That's okay." But it was not okay. He could hear it in the way she said it, the practiced softness of someone making disappointment easier for the adult in the room. "I'll get some," he said. She did not answer. He moved toward the door. "I'll leave the hall light on." "Mr. Cole?" The name sounded wrong in her mouth, too formal, too far away. He turned. "Yes." "Did my mama love you?" The question filled the room and left no place for him to stand untouched. He could have said adults are complicated. He could have hidden behind time-distance mistakes, danger. He could have offered her something gentle and useless. Instead, he looked at Clara's daughter and told the truth. "Yes." Maisie's fingers curled into the sheet. "Did you love her?" Adrian's hand tightened on the doorframe. "Yes." She nodded as if the answer mattered, but did not surprise her. "Then why didn't you come?" The words cut cleanly, because they were not angry. Adrian looked at the child Hannah had never become, the child Clara had hidden, the child he had not known to search for. "Because I didn't know you existed." Maisie watched his face. "And if you did?" He swallowed. "I would have come." Even if Mama was scared. That stopped him. The hallway behind him was quiet. Downstairs, men were moving because of his orders. Phones were ringing. Files were opening. Paper was beginning to rearrange itself around this little girl. "I hope so," he said. Maisie looked down. "That's not the same as yes." "No," Adrian said. "It's not." For the first time, he thought she might cry. Her eyes shone, but the tears stayed balanced, stubborn, and unshed. "Good night," she said. "Good night, Maisie." He left the door half open. A wedge of golden hallway light stretched across the floor. Downstairs, the mansion felt different already. Not warmer, not yet, but altered, as if the walls had heard a child's voice and were not sure what to do with it. Adrian entered his study. Gideon stood near the desk phone in hand files already spreading across the polished wood. Owen arrived 20 minutes later with 4 grocery bags and the solemn expression of a man who had crossed half the city on a mission of national importance. "Cinnamon cereal," he said. "Also plain. Milk, bread, peanut butter, jelly, bananas, apples, toothbrush, toothpaste, hairbrush, socks, pajamas." I guessed sizes. Adrian stared at the bags. Owen added, "Children need snacks." "Do they?" "In my experience, everyone needs snacks. Children are just honest about it." Gideon made a sound that might have been a cough. Adrian looked at him, not a word. I said nothing. By dawn, Clara's file arrived. Adrian did not open it right away. He stood in the kitchen instead, staring into cabinets that had never mattered to him before. Plates, glasses, coffee, whiskey above the refrigerator, spices arranged alphabetically by a housekeeper who had more faith in the kitchen than its owner did. Maisie appeared in the doorway just after 7, still wearing the oversized shirt, her hair tangled on one side. She stopped when she saw him. "Did I do something wrong?" The question hit harder than it should have. No. You're awake. So are you. I heard voices. That was Gideon. The man who worries. Yes. She rubbed one eye with the heel of her hand. I'm hungry. The first ordinary sentence she had spoken in his house felt like mercy. Adrian opened a cabinet. I have cereal. Maisie came closer, cautious but interested. What kind cinnamon? Her face changed completely for one bright second before she controlled it. With milk. Yes. Cold milk. Yes. Do you know how to pour it? Adrian looked at her. I believe I can manage. She climbed onto a stool at the island. Adrian set a bowl in front of her, poured cereal, then milk. Too much milk. The cereal nearly floated. Maisie looked at it with grave concern. That's a lot. I can fix it. You can't unpour milk. He stared at the bowl. She slid it toward herself. It's okay. I like it swimming. Adrian did not know whether to laugh. The sound rose unfamiliar in his chest and died before it reached his mouth. While she ate, he made coffee. Maisie watched the black liquid fill the cup. My mama said coffee is what adults drink when they don't want to admit they're tired. She was right. Are you tired? Yes. Do you cry when you're tired? No. She considered him for a long moment. Maybe you're not tired enough. Gideon entered just in time to hear it. He stopped in the doorway. Adrian did not look at him. Maisie did. Good morning, man who worries. Gideon bowed his head slightly. Good morning, Miss Hart. Do you want cereal I already ate? That's what people say when they don't want to be included. Adrian took one slow sip of coffee. Gideon looked at him. Adrian said, She has rules. So I see. After breakfast, Owen brought in Maisie's belongings from Mrs. Carter's apartment. 2 duffel bags, a small backpack shaped like a faded purple cat, and a cardboard box sealed with tape. Maisie stood at the bottom of the stairs when Owen carried the box inside. Her face went still. That's Mama's. Owen set it down as gently as if it contained glass. No one opened it, he said. Maisie walked to the box and placed both hands flat on the top. For the first time since she had entered Adrian's life, she looked exactly 7 years old. Small, lost, afraid that cardboard and tape were all that remained of the person who had been her whole world. Adrian wanted to tell her she did not have to open it. He wanted to make grief wait in the hallway until she was ready. He wanted absurdly to issue an order against pain. Instead, he stood still. Maisie whispered, Can it go in my room? Adrian picked it up himself. It was light. That made it worse. Upstairs, the guest room began to change. Worn sneakers by the closet, folded clothes in the dresser, a toothbrush by the sink, 3 bird books stacked beside the lamp, a stuffed rabbit with one bent ear placed carefully on the pillow. The purple backpack slumped near the chair like it had finally given up being brave. Clara's box went in the corner. Maisie did not open it. That afternoon, Adrian tried to work in his study. Papers waited. Calls waited. Men waited. Problems at the river pressure from Baton Rouge. A judge who needed reminding which debts were still unpaid. After 15 minutes, he checked the hall camera. Maisie was sitting at the kitchen table drawing on printer paper with a pencil Owen had found. After 20 minutes, Adrian stood and went to the kitchen. He told himself the light was better there. Maisie looked up when he entered. Are you working here now? Yes. Why? The light is better. She looked at the gray rain beyond the window. There isn't much light. Adrian sat at the far end of the table with his files. Maisie returned to her drawing. The pencil moved slowly over the page. She drew a square house with a crooked door, 2 windows, and a tree beside it. No people. Smoke rose from the chimney even though the house had no fireplace drawn. Adrian looked at it longer than he meant to. Is that your old apartment? Mrs. Carter's building, no. What is it? Maisie shaded the roof. Just a house. He returned to his papers. After a while, she asked, Why don't you have pictures? You asked that already. You didn't answer right. Adrian looked up. I never needed them. Maisie's pencil paused. Mama said pictures are proof something happened. He thought of the photograph in his jacket pocket. Younger Adrian outside the clinic, Clara behind the camera. A life that had happened then vanished because only Clara had cared enough to keep proof. I don't have much worth proving, he said. Maisie went back to drawing. I can make some. 2 hours later, the first picture appeared on the refrigerator held by a magnet shaped like a tiny bottle of hot sauce from an event Adrian did not remember attending. He saw it when he reached for water. The crooked house stared back at him. Maisie stood near the table with another sheet pressed against her chest. You don't have to keep it there, she said. It can stay. It's not very good. It can still stay. She nodded satisfied and returned to the table. That night, Maisie did not sleep. Adrian knew because the monitor on his desk showed her door opening at 1:17 in the morning. He sat in the study with Clara's file open in front of him, reading words that punished him in neat black ink. Diagnosis, treatment, recurrence, hospice, final visit. On the screen, Maisie stepped into the hallway and sat at the top of the stairs. She hugged her knees to her chest and looked down into the dark house. She did not call for him. She did not cry. She only sat. Adrian stood, then stopped. He could make armed men talk. He could make officials forget. He could make doors open, money move, enemies disappear. He did not know how to approach a child who could not sleep because her mother was dead. So he watched. At 1:43, she went back to bed. The next night, she came out again. This time, after she returned to her room, Adrian opened the hall closet and found a folded gray blanket, soft wool, unused. He carried it upstairs and placed it on the top step. No note, no explanation. In the morning, the blanket was folded neatly in the same place. Maisie did not mention it at breakfast. Neither did he. The next night, he placed it there before midnight. At 1:22, she came out, wrapped herself in the blanket, and sat on the step for 20 minutes. Adrian watched from the study, one hand pressed against his mouth. By the fourth night, the blanket belonged to both of them. Not comfort. Not yet. A signal. I know you are there. I will not make you ask. On Friday morning, Rebecca arrived with a leather folder, a severe black dress, and no patience for sentiment. Maisie sat at the kitchen table eating cinnamon cereal while Adrian signed forms at the far end. Rebecca explained each document in precise language. Emergency petition, temporary guardianship, medical consent, school authorization, DNA confirmation pending. Maisie stopped eating at the word DNA. Adrian saw it. Rebecca saw it too late. Does that mean you have to prove I'm yours? Maisie asked. The kitchen went quiet. Adrian pulled out the chair across from her and sat down. It means adults like proof on paper. Because of me? No. Because of Mama, no. Maisie looked at him. Because of you. He did not lie. Yes. She pushed one piece of cereal around the bowl with her spoon. If the paper says I'm not, do I leave? No. What if the paper says I have to? Then the paper is wrong. Rebecca opened her mouth, then closed it. Maisie looked at Adrian carefully. You can do that. For you, he said. Yes. Rebecca's eyes moved to him. There was warning there. Legal warning, practical warning, human warning. Promises were dangerous. Promises to children were something else entirely. Adrian signed the last page. His name sat beneath Maisie Hart's. For years, Adrian Cole had been a name that opened doors closed, mouths, bought silence, invited fear. Now it sat under the name of a 7-year-old girl who needed cereal, dry socks, school papers, nightlights, and someone who came back. Maisie lifted another drawing. This one showed the same crooked house, but now there were 2 figures outside. One tall, one small. They were not holding hands. Not yet. Still, they stood close enough that the space between them looked intentional. "Do you have tape?" she asked. Adrian opened 3 drawers before finding it. Maisie placed the drawing beside the first one on the refrigerator and pressed the corners flat with both palms. "There," she said. Adrian stared at the 2 figures. The tall one wore black. The small one wore yellow. Outside, the rain finally stopped. Pale afternoon light moved through the kitchen windows, softening the marble, the steel, the dark polished edges of a house built to reveal nothing. Maisie went back to the table and reached for a blank page. Adrian remained in front of the refrigerator. Behind all the locks, cameras, walls, and quiet rooms, the first crack opened in the fortress. It did not sound like breaking glass. It sounded like paper being taped to a refrigerator. The paper stayed on the refrigerator through the night. 2 small figures outside a crooked house, one tall, one small, standing close enough for the empty space between them to look less lonely. Adrian saw it before dawn. He had come downstairs without turning on the kitchen lights, moving the way he always moved through his own house, silent, practiced, nearly invisible. But the drawing caught what little light slipped through the windows, and he stopped as if someone had spoken his name. For years, that refrigerator had held nothing but polished steel and cold reflection. Now a child had marked it with proof. A house, a tree, a tall man in black, a little girl in yellow. He stood there until the coffee machine clicked behind him. Maisie came down 20 minutes later with the gray blanket wrapped around her shoulders and her stuffed rabbit tucked beneath one arm. Her hair had flattened on one side from sleep. She paused when she saw him looking at the drawing. "You can take it down if it bothers you," she said. "It does not bother me. You were staring. I look at things I am trying to understand." She considered that. "It is just a picture." "No," Adrian said quietly. "It is not." Maisie did not answer. She climbed onto the kitchen stool and waited while he poured cereal, this time with less milk. He watched her take the first bite before touching his coffee. That became the shape of their mornings for a while. Not easy, not warm in the simple way people wrote about in books, but steady. Maisie woke early. Adrian was already awake. She drank orange juice from the smallest glass Owen had found in the back of a cabinet. She read bird books at the kitchen table, one knee tucked under her lips, moving soundlessly over the words. She left drawings in odd places. A robin taped inside the pantry door, a moon beside Adrian's coffee cup, a small yellow sun tucked into Gideon's folder, which he pretended not to notice until Maisie left the room. The house remained guarded. Cameras still watched from corners. The iron gate still closed with a heavy sound. Men still called Adrian in low voices about money debts territory and problems near the river. But something inside the walls had started to breathe. On the 6th morning, Maisie spilled milk. It was not much, only a pale splash across the kitchen floor where her elbow had knocked the glass. The sound of it hitting marble was small, harmless, almost ridiculous. Maisie went white. She slid off the stool so quickly the chair scraped behind her. Before Adrian could speak, she was on her knees with paper towels in both hands, scrubbing at the floor as if the milk had become a crime. "I'm sorry," she said. "I didn't mean to. I can clean it." "I'm cleaning it." Adrian set down his coffee. "Maisie." She scrubbed harder. "It's okay. I can get it." He moved slowly, crouching beside her but leaving space between them. "Look at me." Her hand kept moving. "Maisie." She looked up because he had asked, but everything in her face expected punishment. Not from him, maybe. From the world. from whatever came after a mistake. Adrian kept his voice low. Nothing happens because of spilled milk in this house. Her eyes searched his face. Nothing. I didn't mean to. I know. I was trying to be careful. You do not have to be careful every second. She looked back down at the floor. Yes, I do. The words were so quiet he almost missed them. Adrian sat on the floor beside her. The marble was cold through his suit pants. He could feel Gideon standing in the doorway behind him, but the older man said nothing. Maisie kept wiping until the floor shone. Adrian did not take the towel from her. He did not tell her to stop. He waited. When she was done, she folded the wet paper towels into a small square and held them in both hands. My mama used to say that too, she whispered. What? That nothing happens because of spilled milk? Then she was right. Maisie nodded, but the fear did not leave her all at once. It went slowly like water draining from a cracked bowl. That afternoon, Dr. Naomi Brooks arrived. She came without fuss, wearing a navy coat and carrying a worn leather satchel. She was a small woman with silver in her dark hair and eyes that noticed too much. She did not look impressed by the house. She did not look afraid of Adrian either, which made him distrust her immediately. Gideon met her at the door. Dr. Brooks, he said. Mr. Shaw. Adrian stood in the sitting room near the window, arms folded, watching as Maisie stepped in with the rabbit held against her chest. Dr. Brooks did not bend too low or speak too brightly. She took the chair across from Maisie and placed a small wooden box on the table between them. Maisie looked at it. What's that things to help people talk when words get tired? Maisie's eyes moved to Adrian, then back to the box. Words get tired all the time. Dr. Brooks opened the lid. Inside were small objects. A wooden house, a bird, a key, a boat, a stone, a tiny chair, a dog, a blue glass bead, a little door with no wall around it. Maisie reached for the bird first. Of course she did. Adrian watched her place the house in the center of the table. The bird went on the roof. The key went under the chair. The boat she turned upside down. The stone she placed near the door. Dr. Brooks did not ask why. She did not ask about Clara. She did not ask about death. She did not ask about Adrian. She only watched and sometimes said simple things. That bird has a high place. Maisie nodded. So it can see if anyone leaves. Adrian looked away toward the rain-silvered window. When the session ended, Maisie took the wooden bird with her permission and carried it upstairs. Adrian remained in the sitting room with Dr. Brooks and Gideon. Dr. Brooks closed the wooden box. She is very careful, she said. She is calm, Adrian replied. Dr. Brooks looked at him. Careful is not calm. His eyes narrowed. I know the difference. Do you? Gideon suddenly found great interest in the floor. Dr. Brooks did not soften her voice, which somehow made it harder to hear. She has learned that adults are less likely to leave if she becomes easy to keep. Adrian's jaw tightened. I told her she is staying. I believe you. Then what is the problem? She does not believe the world because the world makes promises. She believes patterns. Who comes back? Who notices? Who stays in the room when she becomes inconvenient? Adrian looked toward the staircase. In his mind, he heard Maisie say, My mama said needing things makes people leave. What do I do? He asked. The question came out rough, unfamiliar. Dr. Brooks picked up her coat. You let her need things, then you do not punish her for needing them. That night, Adrian found Maisie at the kitchen table with a pencil in her hand and the wooden bird beside her paper. She was drawing another house. This one had 2 windows, smoke from the chimney, a bare tree, and a bird above the roof with its wings open. He set a cup of tea in front of her. Maisie stared at it. What is it, chamomile? Do I have to drink it? No. She picked up the cup and sniffed. It smells like grass. That is unfortunate. She took the smallest sip and made a face. Adrian sat across from her. The silence between them no longer felt empty. It had shape now. A pencil moving, tea cooling, rain against glass, a child breathing on the other side of the table. After a while, Maisie asked, "Did Dr. Brooks tell you I'm sad?" "Yes." "Are you mad?" "No. People get tired of sad." Adrian looked at her small hand around the cup. "I have known sad for a long time." She studied him. Does it go away? He could have lied. People lied to children because they mistook comfort for mercy. "No," he said, "but it changes shape." Maisie looked into the tea. "What shape is yours?" Adrian thought of Clara's handwriting. The photograph. The blank line on Maisie's birth certificate where his name should have been. The child in a yellow raincoat standing inside a room full of armed men. "Yours," he said. Maisie's pencil stopped. She did not answer, but she did not leave. 2 days later, rain came down hard over New Orleans. Owen drove them home from school in the black SUV. Adrian had not planned to pick Maisie up himself, but a meeting had ended early after a parish official decided cooperation was better for his health. Adrian told himself the timing was convenient. He told himself he had not been waiting near the school gates 15 minutes before dismissal. Maisie climbed into the back seat holding her bird lunchbox against her chest. "Did school go well?" Adrian asked. Yes, that was all she gave him. The SUV moved through wet streets. Water braided down the windows. Wipers swept back and forth with a tired rhythm. The heater hummed softly. Then a song came on the radio. It was nothing special. A woman's voice, low and warm, singing over a guitar. The kind of song that might play in a grocery store, a waiting room, a kitchen after midnight. Maisie went still. Adrian noticed before she made a sound. Her fingers tightened around the lunchbox. Her mouth opened slightly as if she had forgotten how breathing worked. Then her face folded inward. Not loudly, not like a child throwing herself into grief. Smaller than that. Worse than that. The first tear slid down her cheek, then another. She turned toward the window. "Maisie." She shook her head. The sound that came out of her was not a sob at first. It was a broken breath. Then another. Then her whole body trembled, and the sorrow she had been carrying so politely finally found a door. Owen glanced once in the mirror and turned his eyes back to the road. Adrian unbuckled his seatbelt. The car was moving slowly through traffic. He shifted across the seat and reached for her. For one terrible second, she stiffened. Then she collapsed against him. Adrian held her carefully at first, unsure of where to place his hands. Then she buried her face in his coat and cried with a force that closed his eyes for him. "I want Mama," she cried. His hand settled at the back of her head. "I know. I want to go home." His throat tightened. "I know. I don't know where home is anymore." There was no answer to that. Not one that was not a lie. So he held her closer. He did not tell her it was all right. It was not. He did not tell her to stop crying. She had earned every tear. He only stayed while rain ran down the glass and the city blurred around them. After a long time, her sobs thinned into shuddering breaths. The song had ended. Another had begun. Owen turned the radio off without being asked. Maisie stayed pressed against Adrian's chest, exhausted and ashamed. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "For what?" "For being loud." The words went through him like a blade. "You can be loud." She lifted her face. Rainlight moved over her wet cheeks. "Even here, especially here." She looked at him as if she wanted to believe it, but did not yet know how. Adrian rested his hand gently against her hair. "I miss her too." Maisie blinked. "You do?" "Yes." How much? He looked out at the gray city, at balconies, wet streets, church steeples, people carrying umbrellas like shields. He thought of Clara in blue scrubs, Clara laughing behind a camera, Clara vanishing because she loved a child more than she feared loneliness. "Enough that I should have found her," he said. Maisie studied his face. Then she lowered her head back against his coat. Neither of them spoke for the rest of the ride. The house felt different when they returned. Not safer, not warmer, more honest. Maisie went upstairs to wash her face. Adrian stood in the entryway with Rain still on his shoulders. Gideon waited near the study door, but one look from Adrian kept him silent. That night, Maisie came down after bedtime wearing the oversized shirt and the gray blanket around her shoulders. Adrian was in the kitchen staring at pancake mix Owen had bought because Maisie had once mentioned pancakes. "You're awake," he said. "So are you." "I was working." She looked at the box. "On pancakes research." She came closer and climbed onto a stool. The kitchen light was soft. Rain tapped against the windows. Adrian read the instructions as if they were a legal contract. Maisie watched him pour too much milk into the bowl. "That looks wrong. It is not wrong. It is very wet. It is batter. It is soup." Adrian looked down. She was right. He added more mix. Powder rose in a pale cloud and dusted his sleeve. Maisie covered her mouth, but her eyes smiled. "You can laugh," he said. "I'm not laughing." "You are trying not to." "That is different." He stirred harder than necessary. When he reached for the pan, Maisie's eyes moved to his forearms. His sleeves were rolled up. The scars showed in the warm light. Pale knife lines, a jagged mark near his shoulder, a thin white curve at his wrist, not the birthmark, something older. Her smile faded. "Do they hurt?" Adrian set the bowl down. "Not anymore. How did you get them?" He had prepared lies for this question from the first night. A car accident, a fall, old sports injuries, clean stories a child could hold without fear. Maisie looked at him with Clara's eyes. The lies died before reaching his mouth. Some came from fights. "Did you win most of the time?" "And when you didn't?" He turned the burner lower, though the pan was barely hot. "Those taught me the most." Maisie pushed up her sleeve and showed him a small white line near her elbow. "I got this when I fell off my bike. Mama was teaching me. I went too fast and hit the curb." Adrian leaned closer. "She must have been scared. She ran faster than I ever saw her run." Maisie touched the scar with one finger. "She cried after I stopped crying." "That sounds like her." Maisie looked at him. "You knew her before she was my mama." "Yes." "What was she like?" No one had asked him that. Not Gideon, not Rebecca, not Dr. Brooks. They had asked where Clara lived, how she died, what papers she left, what risks remained. No one had asked who she was when breath still filled her body. Adrian took a slow breath. She was stubborn. Maisie's mouth twitched. She told the truth even when people did not want it, especially then. She drank coffee too late at night and complained she could not sleep. She kept books in every room. She hated roses because she said they tried too hard. She loved yellow. Maisie's face softened. She said yellow made sad rooms remember the sun. Adrian looked at her. She said that to me once too. For a while, only the rain spoke. Then Maisie asked the question he had been circling since she entered his life. Were you bad to her? The batter dripped slowly from the spoon into the bowl. Adrian did not move. Maisie's voice stayed small but clear. I don't mean did you love her? I know you did. I mean, were you bad to her? He turned off the stove. There were questions men could answer with threats, questions they could bury beneath money, questions they could avoid by leaving the room. This was not one of them. He sat on the stool across from her. "No," he said. "Not the way you mean." Maisie waited, but my life scared her. The men around me scared her. The things I would not give up scared her. I thought loving her was enough. He looked at the bowl of ruined batter. It was not. Maisie looked down at her hands. Did she leave because of me? The question struck him so hard he nearly stood. No. But she was having me. She left because of me, Adrian said. Because she knew I could not keep you safe from the world I lived in. Maisie was quiet. Outside, thunder rolled softly over the city. Are you still dangerous? She asked. Adrian looked at his daughter sitting on his kitchen stool wearing socks with little birds on them and grief in her eyes. Yes. Her fingers tightened around the blanket. To me, no. To other people. He looked away for half a second, then back. To people who try to hurt you. Maisie nodded slowly, as if the answer made sense in a world that had already taught her too much. Then she pointed at the bowl. The pancakes are still soup. A sound left him before he could stop it. Not quite a laugh, but close enough that Maisie smiled. They ate the pancakes anyway. They were dense in the middle, burned at the edges, and shaped like broken maps. Maisie covered hers in syrup and declared them mostly food. Adrian accepted the judgment. Later, after she went upstairs, he stood alone in the kitchen and looked at the refrigerator. The crooked house, the tall figure, the small one, the bird keeping watch above them. Footsteps sounded on the stairs. He turned. Maisie stood halfway down, wrapped in the gray blanket. Did I do something wrong? She asked. No. I heard voices earlier. That was Gideon. The man who worries. Yes. Was he worried about me? Adrian kept his voice careful. He worries because that is his job. What is your job? The answer should have been easy. Men across Louisiana could have answered for him. Boss, king, criminal, protector, monster. Adrian looked at the child on his staircase. I am working that out. She accepted this with the tired patience children saved for strange adults. Then she asked, Am I yours? Adrian's chest tightened. You are not a thing someone owns. That's not what I meant. He understood. The silence between them became honest. You are my daughter, he said. The words came out low, rough, almost unfamiliar. Maisie held the blanket tighter. Okay, just that. Okay. Then she turned and went back upstairs. Gideon spoke from the shadow near the study door. That is the first time you said it. Adrian did not look away from Maisie's door. I know. The house settled around them. Pipes clicked softly in the walls. Rain pressed against the windows. Somewhere upstairs, a little girl moved through her grief with a gray blanket around her shoulders. Adrian stood at the foot of the stairs, listening until the floorboards went quiet. By morning, he had removed the pistol from beneath the kitchen drawer, then the one behind the entry table, then the one hidden near the laundry room. Gideon watched from the hall. You forgot the one behind the wine rack. Adrian looked at him. I did not forget. When Maisie came down for breakfast, the house was still guarded, still wired, still watched by cameras hidden in dark corners. But something had changed. Not enough for the world to notice. Enough for a child to set her bird book on the kitchen table and sit a little closer than she had the day before. By the end of January, the house on Prytania Street had learned how to make room for a child. Not loudly, not all at once. It happened in small, stubborn changes that Adrian Cole noticed only after they had already become part of the place. A yellow raincoat hung by the front door beside his black wool overcoat. Bird books leaned against law books on the kitchen table. Cinnamon cereal sat in a cabinet that once held only coffee imported salt and a bottle of bourbon no one admitted was there. The gray blanket no longer stayed folded at the top of the stairs. Some mornings it appeared on the couch. Some nights it lay across Maisie's lap while she read one sock slipping off her heel. The refrigerator had become a wall of evidence. A crooked house, a bird with wide wings, a small girl in yellow, a tall man in black, a tree that had started bare and slowly gained leaves each time Maisie drew it again. Adrian did not comment on the leaves. Maisie did not explain them. That was how trust moved between them. Quietly. Carefully. In pencil marks and cereal bowls and a hall light left on without discussion. Outside the iron gates, the world remained what it had always been. Men lied. Money moved. Debts waited. The Mississippi carried secrets past the docks in the dark. Adrian's name still opened locked doors and closed careless mouths. But inside the mansion, he had started making rules that felt strange in his own voice. No crew business inside the kitchen. No weapons in common rooms. No raised voices after Maisie went upstairs. No one entered the house without Gideon's approval. No one said her name on a call. Her name became the most protected word in Louisiana. Gideon understood the reason, but not the risk of pretending silence could hold forever. He watched the way Adrian shifted meetings earlier, took calls in the garden, ended conversations when Maisie came downstairs. He watched men notice the changes and pretend not to. Pretending in their world was often the first shape of curiosity. One gray afternoon, Gideon found Adrian in the study standing over a map of the riverfront. Red pins marked warehouses. Black pins marked routes. One empty space near the 9th Ward marked a problem Adrian had delayed solving for 3 weeks. Gideon closed the door. Troy Maddox has been asking questions. Adrian did not look up. Troy Maddox asks questions because he enjoys the sound of his own mouth. These were not business questions. That brought Adrian's eyes up. Gideon crossed the room and placed a thin file on the desk. He asked why your meetings have moved, why Owen drives past St. Catherine's Academy twice a day, why you no longer stay at La Couronne after 10, why the house cameras were upgraded by an outside firm instead of our men. The room seemed to narrow. Who told him enough to ask, I am finding that out? Adrian opened the file. There were no photographs inside, only names, times, overheard fragments. Troy Maddox ran a crew out of Baton Rouge, though ran was a generous word for a man who confused noise with power. He had money from stolen cargo, illegal betting, and 2 city council aides too young or too stupid to understand that blackmail was not loyalty. For months, he had pushed at Adrian's edges, testing old boundaries, taking small bites from territory he should have known better than to touch. Adrian had tolerated him because crushing Troy would have drawn attention. Now Troy was looking toward the house. Adrian closed the file. Break his curiosity. Gideon stayed where he was. That is not a plan. It is an instruction. Instructions leak. Drivers talk. Lawyers keep files. Schools have calendars. Children make friends. She is not a secret you can lock in a safe. Adrian's gaze cooled. Careful. I am being careful. That is why I am saying it before fear starts making your decisions for you. Adrian looked toward the ceiling. Somewhere above them, Maisie was in her room reading one of her bird books aloud to the stuffed rabbit with the bent ear. Her voice moved faintly through the house, too soft to understand, but present enough to change the air. Gideon lowered his voice. You cannot raise her like a rumor. Adrian said nothing. The study door opened before Gideon could continue. Maisie stood in the doorway with her bird book hugged to her chest. Her hair was tied badly on one side, a loose ribbon drooping near her ear. Adrian had tried to help that morning. Maisie had looked in the mirror and said it was almost a ponytail which he had chosen to accept as praise. She looked from Adrian to Gideon. Are you fighting, No? Adrian said. Gideon answered at the same time. A little. Maisie's eyes narrowed with Clara's exact suspicion. Which one is true? Adrian looked at Gideon. Gideon looked at Adrian. Adrian said, A little. Maisie accepted this. Is it because of me? No. The answer came too quickly. She heard it. Adrian exhaled through his nose and corrected himself. It is because of the life I had before you came here. Maisie stepped into the room. The scary life. Yes. Is it still here? Adrian looked at the locked cabinets, the maps, the files, the phones, the old habits arranged around him like furniture. Yes. Maisie held the book tighter. Can it come upstairs? The question was not childish. Not really. Adrian came around the desk and lowered himself in front of her. I am trying to make sure it does not. She studied him. Trying is not the same as sure. No, he said. It is not. For once, that answer seemed to satisfy her more than a promise. She lifted the book. There's a heron that eats snakes. Gideon looked relieved to be given safer ground. Does it? Maisie nodded. It waits very still. Then when the snake thinks nothing is happening, the bird gets it. Adrian looked at Gideon. Gideon looked back. Maisie opened the book and showed them the picture. Maybe you need a heron. Gideon's mouth twitched. Adrian said, Maybe we do. That evening, the first mistake entered the house wearing a damp jacket and cheap cologne. Cal Raines was 23, eager, handsome in the unfinished way of young men who believed charm could cover poor judgment. He had been sent with an envelope from the East Bank, a routine delivery that should have taken 30 seconds. Owen was at the garage entrance. Gideon was on a call. The front door opened at the wrong moment. Maisie came down the stairs, holding a pencil and a drawing. Cal saw her, only for 3 seconds. A child in the house of Adrian Cole. A small girl in yellow socks standing halfway down the staircase. Maisie saw him, too. Her body went still. Cal, to his credit, looked away fast. Not fast enough. By the time Adrian entered the foyer, Maisie had already stepped back toward the landing. Her face had gone quiet in the way that made something dark move under Adrian's ribs. Cal held out the envelope. Mr. Cole. Adrian took it without looking down. What did you see? Cal swallowed. Nothing. Adrian looked at him. That is the answer men give when they have seen too much. Cal's eyes flicked toward the stairs, then back. I saw a kid. What kid? Cal's throat moved. I don't know. Good. Maisie remained frozen on the landing. Adrian did not raise his voice. He did not need to. The foyer had learned long ago how to carry his silence. You do not know her name. You do not know her face. You do not ask Owen. You do not ask Gideon. You do not ask the men at the garage. You do not mention a girl in my house to your friends, your girl, your priest, your mother, or God. Cal's face drained. Yes, sir. If her existence travels 1 inch beyond this house, I will not waste time discovering how. Cal began to tremble. Yes, sir. Adrian stepped closer. I will start with you. Cal nodded too fast. Gideon appeared at the study door. Adrian did not turn. Put him on a truck to Houston. Cal blinked. Sir. Tonight. Gideon opened the front door. Cal left without another word. When the door closed, the house did not relax. Maisie still stood on the stairs, one hand on the rail, the drawing pressed to her chest. Adrian looked up at her. You are safe. She did not move. You sounded like him. The words struck clean. Like who? She looked down at the step beneath her feet. Like the scary life. Gideon looked away. Adrian stood in the foyer with rainwater on the marble and a child's accusation hanging between them. He wanted to explain. He wanted to say fear was useful, necessary. He wanted to tell her that men like Cal survived by remembering what could happen if they forgot instructions. But Maisie was watching him, and all those explanations tasted like the same poison Clara had once tried to name. Adrian softened his voice. "You are right." Maisie's eyes lifted. He swallowed the rest of his pride because it had never fed anyone. "I scared him because I was afraid of him, of what he might say about me." "Yes." She came down one step. "Do I have to hide?" Adrian's first instinct said yes. His second sounded like Dr. Brooks. "She believes patterns." He climbed the stairs until he stood 2 steps below her. "You should not have to. That is not the same as no." "No," he said. "It is not." Maisie's fingers tightened around the drawing. "My mama hid me." Adrian's chest tightened. "She did." Was she wrong? He looked at the little girl Clara had loved more than safety, more than comfort, more than him. "No," he said. "She was trying to keep you alive." Maisie looked toward the front door. "Are you trying to keep me alive or let me live?" Gideon's face changed at the bottom of the stairs. Adrian had no answer ready. Maisie waited. Finally, he said, "Both." She nodded slowly, but he could see that both did not yet feel possible to her. The next day, Adrian took her to school himself. He stood near the black SUV while children poured through the gates of St. Catherine's Academy in navy uniforms and bright backpacks. Mothers kissed foreheads. Fathers checked watches. A boy dropped a science project and cried over broken cardboard planets. A teacher laughed and helped him gather Saturn from the sidewalk. Maisie watched all of it from beside Adrian. Her bird lunchbox hung from one hand. "Do they know who you are?" she asked. "Some of the adults do." "Are they scared?" "Some of them." She looked up at him. "Do you want them to be?" Adrian watched a father kneel to tie his daughter's shoe. The answer used to be simple. "No," he said. Maisie seemed surprised by that. She went inside after a careful goodbye, not a hug, not yet, but she did turn back once before passing through the doors. Adrian stood there until he could no longer see her. Across the street, a black sedan idled beside a church wall. Its windows were tinted. It pulled away before Adrian could cross. Owen saw it too. By evening, an envelope waited on the kitchen table. No stamp, no return address. Gideon brought it in wearing the expression of a man who had already decided whom he wanted dead. Adrian opened it while Maisie was upstairs. Inside was a photograph. Maisie at school seated beneath an oak tree with her lunchbox on her lap. A red circle had been drawn around her face. On the back, written in block letters, "Even kings have soft places." The old Adrian arrived first. He came up from deep inside, cold and immediate with every answer sharpened. Names, doors, chains, river water, silence. He could feel the old machinery of himself beginning to turn. Gideon watched him carefully. "Adrian." He said nothing. "If you go after him like this, the whole city hears the scream." Adrian looked at the photograph. "He put eyes on my daughter." "Yes." "That was his last mistake." "Maybe. But if men learn she is the reason, they will all start looking in the same direction." Adrian's hand closed around the edge of the table. From upstairs came Maisie's voice, faint and uneven, reading aloud. The old machinery stopped. Not because the rage left, because it found a wall. Adrian placed the photograph face down. Who delivered it? Courier. Paid cash. No description worth trusting. Troy. Almost certainly. Almost is not enough. I am working on certainty. Adrian walked to the window. Outside, the iron gate stood black against the streetlights. Rain glimmered on the oak leaves. The house looked protected. It was not. Not from curiosity, not from hunger, not from men who smelled love and called it leverage. "We do not hit Troy yet," Adrian said. Gideon's brows lifted slightly. No. What do we do?" Adrian turned from the window. "We make him hungry enough to sell his own shadow." Over the next 48 hours, Adrian did not move like a man seeking revenge. He moved like a man closing a hand. Troy's betting money stopped clearing through 2 shell accounts in Mobile. A dock supervisor who had been taking Troy's cash suddenly remembered a federal subpoena he had been ignoring. A city aide deleted the wrong message and discovered there were copies. Troy's bookkeeper found himself sitting in Gideon's parked car outside a strip mall at midnight, crying into his hands while offering names, dates, and passwords. A warehouse lease in Baton Rouge collapsed. A shipment vanished from a route Troy had bragged no one knew about. No bodies, no noise, no warning that could be traced back to the girl in the photograph. Only hunger, only pressure, only the slow discovery that the floor beneath Troy Maddox had never belonged to him. Adrian still came home for dinner. That was the part that unsettled Gideon most. The old Adrian would have stayed out all night, moving from room to room, making men afraid enough to confess things they had not done yet. This Adrian returned before 6, washed his hands, and sat across from Maisie while she picked peas out of her rice. "You're quiet," she said. "I was thinking. About the scary life. Yes. Is it behaving? No." Maisie pushed a pea to the edge of her plate. "Can lives behave if the person living them insists?" She considered this. "My peas are not behaving." Adrian looked at the plate. "No, they are not." She slid one pea toward him with her fork. "You can have the worst one. Thank you." That was not a gift. It was a problem. He ate it anyway. A few days later, Mrs. Carter came to visit. Owen drove her through the gates in the late afternoon. She stepped from the car slowly, one hand on the door frame, the other gripping a black purse that looked older than most of Adrian's enemies. She was small, white-haired, and built from the kind of stubbornness that made age look like a technicality. Maisie ran to her. It was the first time Adrian had seen the child run toward anyone. Mrs. Carter held her tightly and closed her eyes. "Oh, baby," she whispered. Maisie did not cry, not at first. She just buried her face in the old woman's coat and breathed. Adrian stood back. Mrs. Carter looked over Maisie's head at him. "So this is the house?" "Yes. It is too big." Maisie pulled back. "I told him it looked unhappy." Mrs. Carter looked around the foyer. "You were polite." Gideon coughed once from the hall. Adrian said nothing. They had tea in the sitting room. Mrs. Carter asked Maisie about school food sleep and whether Adrian knew how to buy socks that did not itch. Maisie answered with more words than usual. She told her about the gray blanket, the bird lunchbox, the crooked pancakes, and the drawings on the refrigerator. Mrs. Carter listened as if every detail mattered. When Maisie went upstairs to bring down the wooden bird from Dr. Brooks, Mrs. Carter turned to Adrian. "Clara worried you would love the child like a man collecting what belonged to him." Adrian looked at the tea in his cup. She was right to worry. Mrs. Carter studied him. "And now I am trying not to. Trying is a thin blanket. It is the one I have." The old woman's face softened by 1 degree. "Then keep adding to it." Maisie returned with the wooden bird before Adrian could answer. That night, after Mrs. Carter left, Maisie stood in front of Clara's box. Adrian found her in the doorway of her room, one hand on the frame, eyes fixed on the sealed cardboard in the corner. "You do not have to open it," he said. "I know." She did not move. He remained in the hall. After a long while, Maisie whispered, "What if it smells like her?" Adrian's throat tightened. "It might. What if it doesn't?" He had no defense against that kind of grief. Then we remember other things. She looked at him. Yes. Maisie crossed the room and knelt beside the box. Her fingers picked at the tape but could not lift it. Adrian stepped inside. May I help? She nodded. He used a key, not a knife. Something about a blade near Clara's last things felt wrong. The tape split softly. Maisie opened the flaps. Inside lay a yellow scarf folded carefully, a stack of photographs in an envelope, a hospital bracelet, a small bird figurine made of blue glass, 2 letters, one addressed to Maisie, one to Adrian. Maisie picked up the scarf first and pressed it to her face. Then the sound came. Small, broken, immediate. Adrian lowered himself beside her on the floor. She leaned into him without seeming to decide to do it. He stayed still, letting her choose the weight of her body against his arm. After a while, she opened her letter. Her lips moved as she read silently. Tears dropped onto the paper, darkening Clara's handwriting. When she finished, she held it against her chest. She says I was not a burden. Adrian closed his eyes. No. She says if you're trying, I can let you try. His breathing changed. Maisie looked at the second letter. This one is for you. He took it carefully. Clara's handwriting filled 1 page. Adrian. If she is standing in front of you, then I am gone. I hated writing that sentence. I hated knowing she might have to be brave before the world gave her a choice. Do not love her like the world owes her to you. Love her like a promise you must earn every morning. She will not need your empire. She will need breakfast, patience, truth, and someone who comes back. If there is still a man beneath all that stone, let her meet him. Adrian read it once, then again. The room blurred. Maisie watched him. Are you crying? He touched his face and found the tear there unfamiliar and warm. I think so. She sat beside him. For the first time, her small hand reached for his. Adrian did not close his fingers too quickly. He let her rest her hand in his palm. Then slowly, she held on. Downstairs, the phone rang in the study. Once. Twice. Gideon answered it. A minute later, his footsteps came to the bedroom door. He did not enter. He looked at Adrian, then at Maisie, then back. Adrian already knew. The scary life had not finished knocking. Maisie felt his hand change beneath hers. She looked at him. Is it Troy? Adrian's eyes sharpened. How do you know that name? I heard Mr. Shaw say it once. Gideon looked guilty. Maisie looked at the yellow scarf in her lap. He is the one who made you scared. Adrian wanted to deny it. Instead, he folded Clara's letter with care and placed it back in the envelope. He is the one who made a mistake. Maisie's hand tightened around his. Are you going to be scary? Adrian looked at Clara's box, at the yellow scarf, at the letter that had told him what his daughter needed. Then he looked at Maisie. Not in this room. Gideon's voice came low from the doorway. He sent another message. Adrian stood slowly. Maisie did not let go at first. Then she did. At the bedroom door, he turned back. Maisie was sitting beside Clara's open box, the yellow scarf gathered in her lap, the blue glass bird catching the lamplight. Adrian, she said. Not Mr. Cole. Not yet Dad. Just Adrian. He waited. Come back clean. The words entered him like a command from a throne higher than any he had built. He nodded once. I will. In the kitchen, Gideon handed him the second envelope. This one held no photograph, only an address near the river and one sentence written in black marker. Come alone if you want the secret to stay small. Adrian looked at the paper for a long time. Then he folded it and slipped it into his coat. Outside, New Orleans was turning dark, the river moving unseen beyond the wet streets, carrying every old sin toward the Gulf. Inside the house, Clara's yellow scarf lay across Maisie's knees like a piece of sunlight that had survived the grave. Adrian walked past the refrigerator on his way to the door. Maisie's newest drawing had appeared there that afternoon. A yellow room. A tall man, a small girl. Above them a woman drawn like sunlight. At the bottom, in careful letters, Maisie had written, "Almost home." Adrian looked at those words until Gideon spoke behind him. "Car is ready." Adrian opened the front door. Rain waited on the other side of the door like it had been there all along. Adrian stepped into it without opening an umbrella. The cold water touched his face, slid along his collar, darkened the shoulders of his coat. Behind him, the house glowed warm through the tall windows, and for one brief second, he saw his own reflection in the glass. A man in black. A house full of light behind him. A child upstairs holding her mother's scarf and asking him to come back clean. Gideon stood beside the car, one hand on the open rear door. "You are not going alone," he said. The note said, "Alone." The note was written by a man who thinks you still care about rules made by fools. Adrian looked toward the iron gate. Beyond it, Prytania Street shone black under the rain. Somewhere beyond the city lights, the river waited. Who else knows Owen is on the second car? 2 men outside the perimeter, not from the crew. No one who has ever said her name. Adrian gave one nod and got into the car. Gideon sat beside him instead of in front. That alone told Adrian how worried he was. The driver pulled away from the house. The gate opened, then closed behind them. Adrian did not look back until the mansion disappeared behind the oaks. For several blocks, neither man spoke. New Orleans slid past the windows in blurred gold and shadow. Closed cafes, iron balconies, puddles trembling under street lamps. A lonely saxophone crying somewhere beneath an awning playing to the rain, because the city had never needed permission to mourn. Gideon finally said, "If Troy has her name, he may have given it to others. He has not. You do not know that. If he had, someone else would already be reaching." Gideon watched him. "That is hope wearing a suit." Adrian's mouth tightened. "It is calculation. It is both." The car turned toward the river. The streets widened, then emptied. Warehouses rose in the distance, low and dark against the wet sky. Floodlights burned over chain-link fences. Freight containers stood in rows like sleeping beasts. The Mississippi moved beyond them, black and heavy, carrying pieces of the city no one ever spoke about in daylight. Adrian reached into his coat and touched Clara's letter. Not for comfort, for instruction. Love her like a promise you must earn every morning. The paper was folded against his chest when the car stopped 2 blocks from the address. Gideon checked his phone. Owen is in place. Adrian opened the door. Gideon caught his arm. "If you go in like the man he expects, he wins." Adrian looked at his hand. Gideon released him but held his eyes. "He threatened your daughter." "That is true. But if you answer by becoming every nightmare Clara ran from then, Troy does not have to touch the child." He already reached her. Rain slid down Adrian's face. For a moment, the old answer rose inside him. It had weight. It had teeth. It knew how to end problems and call the ending peace. Then Maisie's voice came back to him. "Come back clean." Adrian turned toward the warehouse. "I heard you." The address led to an old storage building near the water, its windows broken, its brick walls dark with rain. A single lamp burned above the open side door. Inside, the air smelled of oil, metal, river mud, and old wood. Troy Maddox waited in the middle of the floor. He wore a tan coat, too expensive for his posture, and a smile too wide for his face. 4 men stood behind him, hands near their jackets. None of them looked calm enough to be dangerous for long. Troy spread his arms. Adrian Cole. The King of New Orleans came walking into my little room. Adrian stepped inside. Gideon followed 2 paces behind. Troy's smile thinned. I sat alone. Adrian looked around the warehouse. "You wrote alone." I read it. One of Troy's men shifted. Gideon's eyes moved to him, and the man went still. Troy laughed. "You always were theatrical. You asked for me. Speak." Troy clicked his tongue. No greeting, no anger, no famous Cole temper. Adrian said nothing. That made Troy's smile work harder. I have to admit I did not believe it at first. Adrian Cole leaving meetings early. Adrian Cole buying children's cereal. Adrian Cole standing outside a school like some nervous suburban father. The word father moved through the room. Adrian did not move with it. Troy watched for a flinch and found none. That disappointed him. So I asked around. Troy continued, not loudly, just enough. A driver here, a clerk there, a delivery boy with big eyes and loose lips. Then I saw her. Gideon's jaw tightened. Troy reached into his coat. Gideon moved. Adrian lifted one hand. Troy smiled and slowly removed a photograph. Maisie at the school gate, head turned toward the building, her yellow raincoat bright against the gray morning. Adrian looked at the picture. The warehouse seemed to fade at the edges. Troy waved it gently. "Pretty little thing." "Clara Hart's girl? Yes, or should I say yours?" Adrian's voice stayed quiet. "You took a picture of a child. I found a weakness. You found a child." Troy's eyes sharpened. "That is what weakness looks like when men get old." Adrian stepped closer. One of Troy's men lifted his hand under his coat. Gideon's voice cut through the room. "I would not." The man froze. Troy kept his eyes on Adrian. "You built your empire on fear, and God handed you a soft place. That is not a blessing. That is a handle." Adrian stopped a few feet away. "What do you want South River access? 2 warehouses. Protection on the bedding routes. And when I call you, answer." Adrian studied him. "That is small." Troy's face tightened. "Small. You found what you believe is my heart, and that is all you ask for." The insult landed. Troy's smile twitched. "I am being reasonable." "No, you are being unimaginative." For the first time, Troy looked uncertain. Adrian turned slightly. Gideon opened the folder he carried beneath his coat and took out a stack of papers sealed in plastic against the rain. "Troy Maddox Gideon said your mobile account is closed. Your Baton Rouge lease is gone. Your bookkeeper is in protective custody under a name you do not know. Your council friends have already denied ever meeting you. The dock supervisor gave up your cargo routes 12 hours ago. Your federal file, which was thin this morning, is now gaining weight." Troy's face changed. Adrian watched the confidence drain slowly, and with it the room's balance. "You are lying," Troy said. Gideon placed photographs on a rusted metal table. Troy looked down. His bookkeeper entering a federal building. A council aide speaking to a man in a dark sedan. A warehouse emptied before dawn. A bank notice. Names, dates, doors closing. Troy swallowed. Adrian said, "You thought you were pulling on a thread. You did not notice the whole suit was already burning." One of Troy's men stepped back. Troy heard it. His eyes flicked sideways. Adrian noticed. So now Adrian continued, "You will give Gideon every copy of every photograph, every name you spoke to, every account where you stored what you thought you knew." Troy tried to laugh. "And if I don't?" Adrian looked at him for a long moment. Old Adrian would have enjoyed that question. New Adrian found no pleasure in it. "If you do not," he said, "by sunrise you will not have a business, a crew, a city, or a friend willing to say your name out loud." Troy's hand twitched near his coat. "Maybe I still have the girl." The old machinery in Adrian woke fully. For 1 second, every man in the warehouse felt it. Even Troy. Even the rain seemed to hush against the broken windows. Adrian stepped closer, until only inches separated them. "You do not have her," he said. "You do not speak of her as if she can be held by men like you. You do not think her name. You do not dream her face. You do not carry her shadow out of this room." Troy's lips parted. Then pride made him stupid. He reached for his gun. He never touched it. The man behind him took it first. Troy turned, stunned. "What are you doing?" The man backed away, gun pointed toward the floor. "Surviving." Another of Troy's men lifted both hands, then another. Gideon took the photograph from Troy's hand. Troy looked around the warehouse and understood too late that the room had emptied itself of loyalty before Adrian ever walked in. His voice cracked at the edge. "You bought them." Adrian shook his head. "You underpaid them." Rain blew through a broken window and scattered dirt across the floor. Gideon gathered the photographs, the envelope, the phone Troy surrendered with shaking hands. Owen entered from the side door with 2 men Adrian did not recognize by name and did not need to. They collected a laptop from a crate near the wall, then a second phone from Troy's driver. Adrian remained in front of Troy. The younger man tried to rebuild himself with hatred. "You think this makes you clean?" Adrian did not answer. Troy smiled weakly. "You are still what you are." "Yes," Adrian said. That seemed to surprise him. Adrian leaned in. "But tonight I decide what that means." Gideon came beside him. "What do you want done with him?" The question filled the warehouse. Outside, the river moved through the dark, patient and ready. Adrian knew how easy it would be. A nod, a walk to the water, a body swallowed by mud and current before dawn. No witness who mattered, no court, no future problem. Old mercy had always looked like weakness. Old justice had always worn blood. Adrian looked at Troy Maddox, who had taken a picture of his daughter and mistaken fear for power. Then he thought of Maisie sitting beside Clara's box, yellow scarf in her lap. "Come back clean." Adrian stepped back. "Put him on a plane." Troy blinked. Gideon looked at Adrian, but said nothing. Adrian continued. "If he enters Louisiana again, the federal file opens before he finishes unpacking. If one word about the child leaves his mouth, every man who still owes him breath will learn what it costs to listen." Troy stared. "You are letting me walk." "No," Adrian said. "I am letting my daughter wake up in a house that does not smell like what I did to you." Troy's face twisted, but he had no answer left. Gideon gestured to Owen's men. They took Troy by the arms. As they dragged him toward the side door, Troy looked back once, rain blowing across his face. "You will always be afraid now," he spat. Adrian looked at him. "Yes." The honesty stopped Troy more than a threat would have. Adrian said, "That is how I know she matters." Then Troy was gone. The warehouse settled into quiet. Gideon stood beside Adrian while Owen checked the last phone. After a while, Gideon said, 6 months ago he would have gone into the river. Adrian watched rain drip through the roof. 6 months ago, no one was waiting for me to come home clean. They left before dawn. The city was sleeping when the car returned to Britannia Street. The rain had softened to mist. Street lamps glowed gold through the oaks. The iron gate opened with its familiar groan, and Adrian felt the sound in his chest this time. The house was still lit in one upstairs window. Maisie's room. Adrian entered quietly. Gideon remained near the door, speaking low into his phone. Owen disappeared toward the garage. At the foot of the stairs, Adrian stopped. The gray blanket was not at the top step. It was wrapped around Maisie, who sat halfway down the staircase with her knees pulled to her chest. Her eyes were heavy with sleep, but open. Adrian's chest tightened. "You should be in bed. You said you'd come back." "I did. I was checking." He climbed the stairs slowly and sat 2 steps below her. For a while they listened to the house, pipes ticking in the walls, rainwater dripping from the gutters, Gideon's low voice fading behind the study door. Maisie looked at his coat. "Is there blood?" "No." "Yours?" "No." "Anybody's?" Adrian shook his head. "No." She studied him with solemn care, as if truth had a temperature and she was learning to feel it. "You came back clean." "I said I would." "People say things." "Yes." He rested his forearms on his knees. "Then I will keep saying them, and keep doing them, until the words stop feeling empty." Maisie leaned her head against the banister. "Did you scare him?" "Yes." "Did you hurt him?" "Not the way I wanted to." She looked at him. "That sounds hard." It was. "Good." The answer surprised him. Maisie shrugged under the blanket. "Dr. Brooks says hard things count more when you still do them." Adrian almost smiled. "Dr. Brooks says many things. She's usually right. Unfortunately." Maisie's mouth moved almost a smile, then faded. "Can I ask something? Always?" She swallowed. "Can I call you Dad?" The word entered him quietly, but everything inside him stopped for it. He looked at the child on the stairs. Clara's child, his child wrapped in the gray blanket he had once left as a signal because he did not know how to offer comfort with his hands. "Only if you want to," he said. "I want to try it." His voice was rough when he answered. "Then I would like that." Maisie looked down at the blanket. "Okay, Dad." Adrian closed his eyes. The house did not change in any visible way. No light burst through the windows. No music rose from the walls. The locks stayed locked. The cameras stayed hidden. The city beyond the gates stayed dangerous. But the word moved through the rooms anyway. Dad. Not boss. Not king. Not Mr. Cole. Dad. Maisie shifted closer until her shoulder touched his, not leaning fully. Not yet. But enough. Adrian stayed still and let that small weight teach him what victory felt like when it did not require anyone to lose. Later that morning, he made pancakes. Not perfect ones. Not even good ones. But they were no longer soup. Maisie stood on a stool beside him, directing with the serious expression of a general. "Less milk." "I know. You said that last time. And I have grown since then. You are already very tall." "That is not what I meant." She poured chocolate chips into the batter without asking. Adrian looked at the bowl. "That is many. It is the correct amount." He let it stand. Gideon entered as the first pancake burned along one edge. Maisie pointed at him with the spatula. "You may have the ugly one." Gideon looked at Adrian. "I am honored." "You should be," Maisie said. "It has the most character." Adrian turned away before they could see the smile he failed to stop. By noon the rain had passed, leaving the city washed and bright. Adrian took Maisie to a small cemetery outside Lafayette where Clara Hart lay beneath a simple stone near a white church with peeling trim. Spanish moss hung from the trees. The grass was wet enough to darken Adrian's shoes. Maisie carried yellow flowers in both hands. She walked to the grave without asking which one. Adrian wondered how many times she had imagined this moment. How many times she had spoken to Clara in rooms where no one answered. Maisie knelt and placed the flowers against the stone. "Hi, Mama." Her voice did not break, but Adrian's almost did. He stood behind her with his hands at his sides, useless as weapons in a churchyard. Maisie looked up. "You can say something." Adrian stared at Clara's name carved into the stone. Clara Elise Hart. The dates beneath seemed too small for a woman who had changed his life twice. Once by loving him, once by leaving, once more by sending him their daughter. "I am sorry," he said. The wind moved softly through the trees. "I am sorry I did not find you. I am sorry I made love feel dangerous. I am sorry you had to be brave alone." Maisie reached for his hand. He took it, his voice lowered. "I will spend the rest of my life making sure she never has to disappear to be safe." Maisie leaned against his side, this time fully. They stood like that for a long while, father and daughter beneath the moss with Clara between them and around them. Not gone exactly, not present exactly, but held in the yellow flowers, the child's wrist, the man's promise, and the silence that no longer felt empty. When they returned to New Orleans, afternoon light poured through the windows of the house on Britannia Street. The mansion still had locks. It still had cameras. It still had men who watched from places strangers would never notice. But inside it had become harder to mistake it for a fortress. Maisie's raincoat hung by the door. The yellow scarf lay over the back of a kitchen chair. Bird books covered one end of the table. Pancake mix sat in the pantry. The refrigerator was crowded with drawings now. Houses, birds, crooked suns, a gray blanket, a tall man with a straight line for a mouth that had begun in recent pictures to curve. Maisie went upstairs after lunch and came back with a fresh drawing held against her chest. Adrian was in the kitchen with Gideon signing the last of the school authorization forms Rebecca had sent that morning. He looked up when Maisie approached the refrigerator. She took a magnet shaped like a tiny pelican and placed the drawing in the center over the older pictures, but not covering them completely. Adrian stood. The drawing showed a yellow house, a tall man, a small girl, a woman above them drawn like sunlight. A bird stood on the roof, wings open. At the bottom, in careful child handwriting, were 2 words. "My family." Adrian stared at them. Gideon saw the drawing and became very interested in the coffee machine. Maisie stood beside Adrian, waiting. "Is it okay?" she asked. His throat tightened. "It is perfect. It's not perfect." He looked down at her. "It can still be perfect." Maisie smiled then. Not almost. Not hidden. A real smile, small and bright and brave enough to stay. Adrian looked back at the drawing. For years, men had feared his name. They had crossed streets to avoid his eyes. They had lowered their voices when he entered rooms. He had built an empire from silence, debt, and the careful distribution of fear. Now one child trusted him enough to put him in a picture. It terrified him more than any enemy ever had. But this time, he did not want to run from fear. He wanted to become worthy of it. That evening, as the sky over New Orleans turned gold, Adrian stood in the kitchen while Maisie read at the table, her sock slipping off one heel, her pencil tucked behind her ear. Gideon worked quietly in the next room. Somewhere outside, the city moved on with all its music, hunger, danger, and light. The house held. Not because the world had become safe, because someone inside it had decided to stay. The empire Adrian Cole built on silence did not fall in one night. It cracked slowly. With a child's drawing, a gray blanket, a yellow room, a promise kept before breakfast, and a little girl who opened the forbidden door showed him the mark on her wrist and reminded the most feared man in New Orleans that even stone can learn to beat like a heart.